Hey guys, here is a short video to showcase to you the hardest hitting weapon in standard RLCraft 2.8.2 and why. This weapon has been known by the top tier RLCrafters for a while now, and I felt like telling you guys about it today. Let me know if it surprises you. Without wasting any time, the hardest hitting weapon in the game with the most useful supporting enchantments that can be made entirely in survival is the Ice Dragonbone Rapier with the following enchantments. The enchantments for the Rapier are Supreme Sharpness 5, Swifter Slashes 5, Rune Piercing Capabilities 4, Advanced Looting 3, Arc Slash 3, Subject PE 5, Difficulties Endowment 5, Viper 5, Supreme Fire Aspect 2, Lifesteal 4, Combat Veterancy 3, Parry 3, Envenomed 5, Education 3, Atomic Deconstructor 2, Curse of Possession, Advanced Mending, Unbreaking 3, Upgraded Potentials, True Strike, and Purging Blade. Now, some of you may not be convinced, so let me explain why this weapon is so powerful. Rapiers do 200% more damage to enemies without armor. This normally is not too big a deal, but the enchantment Rune Piercing Capabilities 4 makes you pierce through the enemy's armor by 100%, and this makes all enemies in the game register as not having any armor, so you get that 200% bonus for everything. This on its own makes the rapiers pretty much do 3 times more damage than expected. This method for extra damage only works with the enchantment Rune Piercing Capabilities 4. Next, Arc Slash. This is an amazing AoE enchantment that lets you hit all enemies around you, but it does not work properly on greatswords because the weapon's passive ability Wide Attack 2 conflicts with the enchantment. Halberds have more range than rapiers, but do not have the 200% extra damage that they have, so they end up doing less damage still. And sabers are still amazing, but they only do 100% extra damage instead of 200%, so rapiers do more. Rapiers also attack faster than all these weapons, only being outsped by nunchaku, but nunchaku do not get the 200% extra damage and do not absorb 25% damage taken from enemies like rapiers do. Next, onto the enchants. The enchantments are rather straightforward, but I will still explain them. The main selling point of the weapon comes from Envenomed 5 and Viper 5. Envenomed 5 can only be obtained in dungeons or by librarian training though, so sadly you can't completely test the max damage of this weapon in creative mode. Anyways, the main damage enchant Envenomed 5 puts a strong poison and wither on the enemy for an extended period of time. Viper 5 makes your weapon do incredible damage to enemies that are poisoned and or inflicted with wither. And with Envenomed, you toss on both of these effects to truly take advantage of Viper 5. Envenomed and Viper seem to have been made for each other. These enchantments do not stack with Mordialis sadly, so we have to use Difficulties Endowment 5, which is not quite as good as Mordialis, but still adds on some major damage the higher your game's difficulty is. On hard difficulty, it makes your weapon do about 3 times more damage as a base, so it helps a bit. Mordialis is better on its own, but Envenomed and Viper make the weapon hit harder and do more DPS overall. To make Envenomed do even more damage, you can wear a Poison Stone Bauble. This bauble makes your poison attacks hit harder and makes you immune to poison. It's like a better Bezorb. Now onto the Insupporting Enchants of the weapon. Parry 3. This makes you block over half of all attacks, and that is incredibly useful. Atomic Deconstructor 2. This gives you a chance to insta-kill enemies aside from like summonable bosses. This isn't necessary for this weapon since it pretty much insta-kills or two-shots everything already, even dragons and withers, but it is still a fun enchant. Subject PE. This is incredibly strong because the potion effects it gives you when you slay enemies can come in handy, and the subject enchants all make your sharpness enchants do more damage. Subject English does a bit more damage than PE for PvP though. Subject History can end up doing more damage on older worlds, and Subject Science causes explosions from your weapon. You can use whichever one of these subject enchants you want, but I believe Subject PE is the most useful because the speed boost, haste, and strength buffs are more useful for dungeon crawling and other PvE elements. Lifesteal 4. Lifesteal will get overwritten by vampirism if you put both on your weapon, so you should only put Lifesteal 4 on your weapon. From testing, Lifesteal 4 is much better for healing output. Combat Veterancy 3. This makes you heal yourself even more with healing effects, such as Lifesteal, so it is a good enchantment to have. Curse of Possession. This curse enchant makes you unable to take your weapon out of your inventory besides putting it in storage. This makes your weapon unable to be disarmed by enemies, so it is extremely amazing because being disarmed by enemies sucks. Swifter Slashes 5. This makes your rapier, which already attacked fast, attack even faster. Education 3. This makes you get even more XP from mob fighting besides from blight mobs. Advanced Looting 3. This gives you better mob drops and stacks with Education. Rune Piercing Capabilities 4. We talked about it earlier, but it makes you pierce through your enemy's armor by 100%. Supreme Sharpness 5. This adds on a lot of extra damage and is a go-to desired enchantment. Supreme Fire Aspect. Supreme Fire Aspect isn't as useful on an ice weapon, but it will give you that first tick of fire damage, so it technically adds a few damage, so it doesn't hurt. And lastly, upgraded potentials, so you can afford to put all these enchantments on without spending hundreds of levels. Now, the last two enchants that I haven't mentioned are optional, but if you are on a multiplayer server, they are incredibly useful for PvP elements. True Strike. This enchantment pierces through the evasion enchantment by 75% that so many geared players use, and the other useful PvP enchantment is Purging Blade 5. This enchantment gets rid of enemy potion effects, so it will strip Battle Burrito buffs and other buffs that players will try to use. One last thing before I wrap up. If you have an enchanted offhand weapon, its enchantments stack with your main hand weapon's damage and abilities. To maximize your damage, you can have a Reinforced Sharpness and Subject Mathematics 4 enchanted axe in your offhand. Reinforced Sharpness is a sharpness nearly as good as Supreme Sharpness, and Subject Mathematics increases damage of sharpness enchants more than any other subject enchantment. As of RLCraft 2.8.2, you can only put these two enchantments on axes though. Your main weapon will hit so hard already that it is not necessary to have this offhand weapon, but this video is about damage, and the more damage, the better. With that, I'm going to wrap up. Needless to say, this weapon far exceeds the overall damage cap for some bosses in the game, doing nearly thousands. Usually it is better to use a god bow on those bosses anyways, so I don't complain. If you want me to though, I can make a video talking about the strongest possible weapon to take on Lycanite bosses and the like with that won't exceed the damage cap. I hope this video helped you guys. Use this knowledge wisely. Take care of yourselves, gamers. Bye-bye.